So I guess we can start this week talking about Avengers Endgame, which I guess we'll try not to share any spoilers at all, but no promises. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to hear anything at all about it, then turn this off right now because there's a decent chance that I'll slip up. Not with something big, but maybe enough that people would not like it. But interestingly, I mean, we're not just going to talk about Avengers Marvel stuff just for the sake of talking about Marvel stuff because that's what happened yesterday with the premiere. But more so that it actually has a lot to do with the subject matter this year. Specifically, well, there's a couple things. I guess we could start first off with that interesting Easter egg that popped up this week.
Yeah, a Thanos Easter egg. So if you search Thanos, the supervillain in Avengers, on Google search for desktop, the knowledge panel on the right hand side will feature the Infinity Gauntlet. So when you press that, it'll do its snap, and as you scroll down the page, search results will disappear. It'll fade out just like the movie, and the number of available results will drop down in half from like 88 million to 44. And that is a very clever, very in-depth Easter egg from Google this year.
Yeah, this is like one of Google's most, I guess, extensive Easter eggs in a long time. And I mean, it's not as simple as just clicking that glove and everything disappears. It's like there's sound effects to it. If you turn your volume all the way up, you can hear sound effects with everything that's disappearing. The snap has like a really satisfying click noise, just like in the movies. Yeah, it's crazy. It reminds me of I guess it reminds me of kind of like the do a barrel roll Easter egg from
Yeah,
that was one of the early ones. It's kind of like that, and I wonder if I wonder if this is going to be something that sticks around as just an Easter egg that will be permanently there, just like a lot of them are. You can also do what is the meaning of life or whatever, and it'll say 42. There's tons of little things that have stuck around from other films and pop culture references and games and stuff. And I wonder if this will be one that's going to stick around for the long haul.
I haven't been able to see the RAM usage, but I'm curious how intensive this is behind the scenes. The animations, I'm kind of curious now. But yeah, that was Thanos. I think it appeared on Wednesday because the movie premiered earlier around the world. But as of today, entering Thanos in Google search it should be available for you right there, the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, so definitely check that out if you haven't already.
Definitely. So, what's next in this?
I was wondering though, is it on mobile too? Does it do the same thing if you search? I'm trying it right now. Let's see.
I'll try the Google.
Yep, it is. It does the exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah. Fully mobile compatible. So yeah, if you're on a phone right now, you can just check it out.
Are you doing google.com or?
Yeah, google.com. Searching Thanos.
Oh wow, the Google app does as well.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
This is
well, in other Marvel Avengers news, well, I guess the Pixel 3a, obviously, I mean, Google teased earlier this month that the Google Pixel 3a announcement was going to be in some way Avengers related. We've joked that the A in Pixel 3a may stand for Avengers even. We know that the announcement's on May 7th. And what was the tease? I forgot exactly what the tease was that Google used, but it was like welcoming a new hero to the Google Pixel universe.
Pixel universe. Yeah.
So we know that there's going to be some level of Avengers tie-in, and I guess seeing Google announce that or put that teaser up earlier this month, kind of was the first tip-off to think, okay, every phone, I mean, not every phone, every movie nowadays pretty much has some kind of sponsored highlight with phone companies. Sony we've seen in James Bond movies and et cetera, et cetera. And in this case, it looks like we were tipped off that Pixel was going to be in the movies, and it is indeed in the movies. Obviously, we're not going to drop any crazy spoilers, but I guess reports started popping up on Reddit yesterday as the movie was being debuted in China and I guess Australia. Um, and then we both got a chance to see it last night, and we can confirm indeed that there are multiple times in the movie where you can see a
Two.
pixel on screen, two at least. I don't know.
Mm,
I'm going to watch it again in the next few days, I think, and maybe see if I can spot more. But it's a fun little game. It's just
indeed.
fun being a Google writer and having this opportunity. But
It also made it
so
feel like work,
yeah, that's true. It also made feeling watching the movie was
which
a
can
little
be expensed, mind you.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, so the first moment is earlier on in the film. Thor is like having his picture taken. Spoiler alert! If you want to just turn this off right now, go ahead. But Thor is or some kids walk up and ask to take a photo with Thor and not
Hulk.
Thor, not Thor, Hulk.
Hulk.
Sorry. Yeah, the Hulk and yeah, so he has a pixel, and it obviously is it's really funny because in Hulk's hand, the Pixel 3 looks tiny.
Yeah. So he ends up handing it over to Ant-Man, Scott Lang, and there's the Pixel 3 stays on screen for quite a while because there's
Yeah,
this
it's like a
joke
solid
about
like 2 or 3 minutes. It feels like, right?
definitely because Scott asked the kids if they want to take a picture with Ant-Man, and they don't even know who he is. So it's basically by the end of this little skit, it's basically him like, take the phone. I get it. You don't want a picture with me, and it was solid. It was a solid comedy bit.
Yeah, it was very clearly a not pink Pixel 3. Although, I mean, if you're not a Google writer full time, you might not notice that it's anything other than any other phone. But it's interesting they did pick the not pink variant because I think the not pink variant is the one of the three that stands out the most.
Yeah, definitely.
With the orange power button and obviously the pinkish color. So yeah, that was really interesting to see. And then the second time is later in the film. Yeah, I guess I'll let you describe it.
Okay, so Hawkeye,
Good luck
Quint.
describing this one without spoilers.
So Hawkeye, Quint Barton receives a call from his wife, and apparently Hawkeye uses a not pink Pixel 3 as well. So when we see this incoming call, it's the actual Google phone UI. It's the status bars and nav is absolutely correct. You even see the screen call button and the
Hmm.
assistant logo, and it focuses there for a few, I don't know, like maybe 20 seconds, and you can really see the full UI and the entire interface. And
Yeah,
that was, it made sense. It was because of the moment in the movie, it made sense why you would like stay on that shot for a while. And it was, as a result, I think Google got a pretty good exposure
yeah,
of the Pixel 3 right there.
it was basically filling the entire. I mean, what we're describing here is we're describing a Google Pixel on the screen in these huge theaters, taking up pretty much the majority of the screen, showing the Google phone UI and screen call and the assistant icon that's next to that, and it's very clearly a Pixel phone.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal for Google, I think. But yeah, those are the only two we spotted. Maybe we'll spot more in the background or whatever. We'll see. But yeah, that's the Pixel in Avengers Endgame. Um, and I guess the next thing we're expecting is that Google will have some kind of tie-in with Avengers when they announce the Google Pixel 3a on May 7th, which is, for those that don't know, the very first day of Google I/O, the day of the I/O keynote, which will likely feature many of Google's biggest execs on stage, as it does every year in products. We'll probably see a lot of Google Assistant stuff. We still know if hardware will make an appearance on stage. We don't know if the Pixel 3a will be a main talking point, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
it's yeah. I'm sure we'll get into this next week, but yeah, that is going to be so interesting to see Rick Ostro and company announce hardware on stage.
Yeah, we'll see. In other Pixel 3a news, this week was even more leaks. We've pretty much seen the phone leaked in the flesh and in person, months ago. And we had a pretty well sourced report on all the details. Um, and I actually did a Q&A or a AMA or whatever you want to call it on Twitter for the Pixel 3a. So yeah, we've pretty much known everything there is to know about it for a long time now, but this week was the first time we saw some official press renders, or what we've, I guess, realized at this point are now official press renders. The first ones came from Android headlines, which they do tend to have little exclusives here and there for various Android phones. And they had pictures of the Pixel 3a and the Pixel 3a XL in cases, which is a little bit odd. I was skeptical of these because it's very, very common for tech companies, or not tech companies, case companies like Tech21 and Spigen and all these other ones to just make, their own, honestly, pretty crappy renders. And that's what I thought these might be at first, because the cases that were on these phones and these renders were very obviously Tech21 cases. But it looks like what might have been happening, or might be the case, is that these might be Tech21 cases that are going to be sold on the Google Store, and these were renders made for the listing on the Google Store. That would be my guess, because Tech21 has sold things on the Google Store, if I'm remembering correctly, and they do make made for Google accessories. That would be my guess, because it turned out that this phone that was in these renders with the exact same background showing the May 7th date and this interesting fireworks wallpaper,
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
it surfaced again just a few days later from our good friend Evan Blass, who is obviously 100% pretty much 100% solid track record.
Yeah.
So you can't deny that one, and that one didn't have a case on it. So we did see similarities between the official real render that came from Evan Blass, these ones in cases that came from Android headlines a few days earlier, which leads us to believe that the Android headlines ones were real in the first place. Not to say that we doubted that they were real as much as we just doubted that they were official from Google, I think. So yeah, and then most recently, I guess the most notable leak that happened this week was the purplish Pixel 3a, purplish kind of purple.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. Evan Blass had that leak, and it's just a full resolution render. I'm assuming I don't know. I always wonder how Evan gets these. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty. I don't know. It's pretty reliable that the week or two before a launch, Evan gets his hands on official press renders.
Indeed.
And I have to wonder who is sending these to him. And I don't think it's the same person every time. And the easiest way that these are getting out, honestly, is probably embargoed releases that are being sent to press. And so I always think about which person is getting embargoes and is just immediately dragging and dropping them into a drive folder for Evan. That's what I always wonder. Because even in our case, not in this case, but in some cases before, a company has sent us embargoed press renders of a phone, and then an hour later, Evan posts them. And obviously, it wasn't us that sent them to him, but maybe someone else did. So maybe that's how he got them. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know Evan's ways. But yeah, the Pixel 3a in purplish or purpley, kind of purple. I like Joe Fedua. He writes for XDA. He commented earlier on Twitter. He said "whispering purple from across the room" as the possible name. Yeah, whispering purple from across the room, or yelling purple from across the room. That's the color. As if you're just like yelling the color purple from across the room, and that just ever so slightly tints the color off white.
Yeah, we should talk about this cover. It only looks like it's purple when it's next to the white Pixel 3a, but otherwise it looks like an eggshell white. It's very hard to distinguish that it's purple on its own, which is very much in the same lineage, just not pink on the full Pixel 3. So yeah, there's a yellow power button. That is a nice touch. That's a good distinguisher. I think it's enough a pop of color that some people might be kind of drawn to it based on that. But yeah, besides that, it's a purple back, the glass shade, or well, plastic shade
in this case.
This time it's a bit darker. You see the G logo there. But yeah, I think people are going to probably be drawn to this one compared to white or maybe black if you're a bit more classic. But yeah, I think
I completely agree. I think that I think that these pastel colors are awesome. I mean, this is the third year in a row we've had, well, the third release in a row we had kind of blue and then not pink and now purplish or whatever they decide to call it. Um, and I feel like these, I mean, these stand out to me. It's interesting. They stand out by not standing out. You know,
Yeah,
they're not
absolutely.
bold. They're not bold colors, and they don't stand out in that sense. Like if you see one in someone else's hand, it doesn't immediately strike you as that's so obnoxious. But they do stand out because not many other phone makers are doing phones in these kinds of colors. We see a lot of yeah. I don't. Is there anyone that's done a light pink phone like
It's
ever? There's probably not many, if any, manufacturers in the Android space that have done that. And
yeah,
how
that's
many have done
very
a
true.
how many have done a light lilac design? You know,
But at the same time,
it's
it's
unique.
so non-committal. It's like we want to be colorful and playful, but we're not going all the way. So we're doing these pastel colors. It's so
Well,
non-committal,
I
in
think
my
that
opinion.
it's intentionally non-committal because I think time and time again it's been proven that phones sell if they're white or black. The two neutral
Yeah.
colors are the phones that sell, and therefore, what Google's has done is they're saying, well, I want to they want to like retain whatever it is about neutral colors that attracts people or that that attracts buyers. I think mostly that people think about phones as a fashion item in many cases, and they think what's going to go well with most things I wear. I can carry a white phone with literally anything I wear and it will look good with it, or a black phone, and that I mean, they're neutral colors. I think that's how people think about it.
Mm,
And I mean, I know as someone who's married to someone who's not in the tech space at all and goes into a phone store to get a phone, that's how she thinks about buying phones or picking out colors. Is
mhm.
what's going to just jive with 99% of my outfits because I'm going to be carrying my phone every single day. So it's kind of a fashion accessory in a way, even though
Yeah.
even, at least in the Android side of things, it's not as much that as it is on the iPhone side. But my point is that I think Google wants to retain that aspect while also deviating from it. And I think that's what they've accomplished here. I think the not pink Pixel 3 is the nicest looking Pixel and honestly, maybe one of the nicest looking phones that has ever been released in my opinion.
Mm,
Um, so that's my take on that. And I think that they're continuing to do that with the lilac slash purplish one. And I think they're going to continue it because I think it's working well.
yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've seen the phones, we've seen the front, we've seen the back, we've
See the
seen some
specs.
cases. There's all we need to know is how they're going to position this phone, the story, as I like to call it.
Yeah. I don't think the story is going to be that complicated. I think the pitch is all the camera prowess of of a premium Pixel at a lower price. Like that's going to be you can get everything that you can do everything with this phone camera wise. All you've heard about the camera. You've seen it in the ads. You've heard your friends talk about, no, take my phone, take pictures with the Pixel because the Pixel's better. People are aware of this. And I think the pitch is
Mm-hmm.
going to be you can get that but not pay $800 or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, maybe it'll be 550. I don't know. Start at 550 and 650 for the XL. Maybe 450 and 550. I don't know. I think it's going to be
In the
um,
context of discount, okay, let's take the Pixel 3 right now. It's frequently discounted.
yep.
Would you get okay? The way I see it is right now, between the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3a, I think it's a no-brainer to go to the Pixel 3. However, when you're looking at the 3XL and the 3A XL, I think the notch is that much of a turn off for some people that the 3A XL might be a better might appeal more to some users
Yeah, I think
in
if you're
terms of
talking about people who would be watching this podcast right now, or even aware that this podcast exists, or listening to this podcast, then I think that analysis stands for sure.
mhm.
I think there are definitely people that are just very opinion about phones, and they would prefer to not have the notch, and so they see the 3A XL as a great alternative. Plus the
And the
headphone jack.
cost.
Headphone
Yeah,
jack is another thing too.
and the
Um,
cost.
but I think and the cost. And I think my stance on it is that most people outside of that bracket. So people that are completely oblivious to the fact that these kinds of jobs that we're doing right now even exist, which is a pretty good percentage of the population. They just buy phones walking into a store and picking one that looks best, one that seems best, one that at a very low level of analysis seems to be the best value, or has one or two features that, maybe they absolutely need. So someone might go into a store and say, I need a headphone jack, and I have I'm not willing to compromise on that at all. And so for that kind of buyer, they're not looking at, does it have a Snapdragon 800 versus a Snapdragon 700? They're not looking at, does it have two cameras on the front versus one camera on the front? They're not even looking at something like wireless charging. They're just thinking, I want a headphone jack, and I think that for those buyers, even so, I guess that what I'm getting at is, for you and I, we're aware that the Pixel 3 is a better value, especially at its discounted prices. For pretty much everyone, it has the better specs, it has more features, it has a more premium build, it has wireless charging, everything. It's a better phone pretty much in every way, especially at its 50% off crazy discounts. But I think that the majority of people are going to be walking into a Verizon store or a T-Mobile store, and they're going to see the Pixel 3 at retail price, and they're going to see the Pixel 3a at a lower than retail price. And they're going to say, well, what's the trade-off? And the salesman's going to be like, well, you get a headphone jack. And they're going to be, okay, I want the 3A.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I think the 3A is going to do well, even though to us, at least to me, the 3A doesn't make any sense at all in the context of the 3A, of the 3 and 3XL being as cheap as they've been. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
And I think the calculus changes further once the Pixel 4 is out and the Pixel 3 is on fire sale for a few months until Google runs out of stock. I think that's going to be an even closer blurring of the lines.
I think that when the Pixel 4 launches, I think the 3 is going to be discontinued, and I think the 3A will stick around.
But definitely, I agree with that. I think it's going to be immediate because the last generation Pixel phone usually lasts for a few good months on the Google Store, on Google Fi.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I guess there is one thing we haven't been able to compare with just pictures. It's the hand feel. I wonder if it's the premiumness of plastic versus glass is going to be a big enough distinguisher. So that's something for us to get our hands on.
For sure. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I just love about the Pixel 3 is the hand feel, and that I guess, what do you call it? The soft touch glass on the back. Like, oh man, that's just it's so great. Like, honestly, just on that alone, I would say find a Pixel 3 on sale instead of buying the 3A to most people. But that's not how most people buy phones, I mean,
it's not.
Most people don't buy phones, honestly, by reading 9to5google.com, and we just have to face that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, that's 3A. It's coming probably in a couple weeks. We'll hopefully get our hands on it at Google I/O, hopefully before Google I/O, so that we don't have to rush through everything on the day one.
Well, I'll start working next week.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, that's Pixel 3A. What else happened this week?
Google I/O, a lot of Google I/O pre-planning is happening.
Yeah, we've been, I don't want to give away any trade secrets, but we've been tracking the Google I/O lineup / speaker lineup / schedule really closely this year. Whereas in years past, we've kind of leaned on just keeping an eye on it. We're doing a little bit more than just keeping a close eye on it this year. And so yeah, there have been little details that just like every year, it seems like every year, man, Google accidentally leaks stuff in the schedule descriptions. Every single year. And it's like, how does that happen? What does this process look like? Is there just one person overseeing whether or not, like, approving the descriptions for sessions? And it's just like, that's not a leak. That's not a leak. That is a leak. Oh, we gotta, like, I can imagine it's hard because they're having to
No, I think the
source.
people are the ones that write it. The actual presenters are the one that
Yeah,
kind of write the
exactly.
descriptions.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think the people that are actually presenting are writing the descriptions and sending them in for approval, and they're getting greenlit without the people that are approving them realizing that they have sensitive information. It's like the actual presenters are not aware of what's sensitive and what's not, and so they're just they get an email, hey, can you write a 100-word description for your session at IO? And they're like, hey, yeah, sure. And they just write, we're announcing Project Euphonia at Google IO. And then they send it in and they just put it online. And by the way,
Mm,
Project Euphonia is one of the things that leaked that our Kyle is working on a post, I think, right now. So you just got a 10-minute heads up on a on a miniature scoop. Maybe 30-minute, I don't know. But yeah,
but yeah,
so lots of little things. You want to give us a little rundown on things we've seen?
the first thing is the official app, the official Google I/O 2019 companion app. An interesting thing they're doing this year is AR navigation. So you should like Google Maps. No, maybe not like Google Maps exactly, but I think they're going to be the signposts this year at I/O are going to have like QR codes and that you can point your phone at, and it'll like tell you where you are right now and what direction to go to. I don't think they're doing full um, image recognition, but I think they're probably relying on barcodes for this. But it should be a fun way to get around I/O this year because it's a massive, tiny campus almost of tents and um, installations. So that's a new thing, AR navigation. The app has a dark mode. There are many sessions about making dark modes for your apps at I/O, so no surprise. But beyond that, it's a standard app. Just AR navigation is quite cool. Will be cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's uh it's not a it's not a visual redesign year this year.
No, it,
Those are the best years.
indeed. One heck of a heads up in the app, in that app.
Yep. Hopefully in 2023 we'll see another visual overhaul for all of Google's user-facing branding stuff. Yeah, material was in 2015, I think, right? And then 2019 was or
Mm.
2014 and 2018 maybe. Can't remember.
So
Yeah,
yeah, speaking of sessions, we saw so FastPair is Google's easier Bluetooth in the same vein as pairing AirPods with your iOS device. So with FastPair introduced in the Pixel Buds, Android phones can have the same experience. We saw a lightning talk this year, TEs using FastPair to find your accessories. So this is presumably using Bluetooth to just find devices that are near you. So that's an interesting extension, especially if Google can bring it to every single current Android device.
yeah, one of the interesting things about Find My Phone. So currently Google's Find My Device app thing is called Find My Phone and it's tied to your Google account and interestingly it's called Find My Phone even though it's not just for phones.
Find device, actually. Find my device. It's
Well,
called officially.
I'm looking at the page right now and it says Find My Phone. Whatever. I've always thought it was weird that I mean you can type in Find My Phone in Google and
Yeah,
click on Find Your Phone and it will say Find Your Phone. And I always thought it was interesting that it's not just phones that
right. I always found it
maybe
interesting.
it's officially called something else, but that's what the page says.
Yeah, I always find it interesting that it's tied to the Google Play branding and now Google Play Protect.
Mm, true.
But yeah, this Find My Accessories thing is probably different. It's Bluetooth based instead of GPS or Wi-Fi. Maybe it's a bit more efficient signal-wise, battery-wise.
Yeah, we'll see more at IO. Which session was this again? Or Lightning
A
Talk?
lightning talk,
Yeah.
which is they're doing a lot this year. IO is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm very curious to see the tent arrangement this year and how many installations they do all over the place.
Hmm. Yeah, so that was that. The other story is the Project Euphonia thing, which is coming up later today. We might talk about that on the show next week. We'll see, but it's probably, I don't know, it might not be that big of a deal, but it does seem like the kind of a thing that Google would announce on stage at I/O. It seems like every year for the last few years they've announced some kind of
Social
humanitarian,
good, yeah.
social good initiative. It sounds like this one is some kind of internal project at Google, presumably leveraging AI, machine learning, and stuff to, seems like, help the speech impaired get their voice back. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, that's I/O. Also, the 2019 Google Play Award nominees were revealed this week, and those winners are going to be announced at I/O.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. And then I guess the other thing that happened this week that was pretty interesting was this debacle with the Galaxy Fold,
Oh,
which
100%.
is still unfolding.
You went there.
I did. For those that don't know, the backstory on the Galaxy Fold is that it was a huge mess, and review units got sent out to the press, and um, many of them basically imploded. Not in the same way that the Note 7 did, but imploded by breaking and falling apart in many different ways. Um, and this week, interestingly, iFixit shared a teardown of the phone. And that was one of the things, whenever I saw iFixit's teardown, I was like, where did they get a phone?
Mm.
That was one thing, because I was like, I mean, obviously Samsung at this point had only sent out devices as far as we knew, except for, I'm sure, lots of closer internal partners and carriers and stuff like that. Publicly speaking, they had only sent out devices to the press, and those were 10-day loaners. And so I was wondering, whenever I saw iFixit's teardown, how did they get a phone? How would Samsung let that happen? Because
Yeah.
it seems dangerous, just the idea of iFixit getting their hands on such a make or break device. And
Also, it's a competitive advantage. You don't want competing companies to see
oh
how you.
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a big factor that I hadn't even thought about. Is that it's still hotly competitive right now between Huawei and Samsung and many others that are working on similar foldable designs. And having public images all over the web of how that design looks on the inside, probably not Samsung's favorite thing in the world. And it turns out that it absolutely was not Samsung's favorite thing, because it seems like they pressured their partner. iFixit is very vague about this, but apparently iFixit had a partner who they call as a partner in, I don't know, forwarding or moving forward device repairability. So apparently a valuable partner to them. Supplied iFixit with this device, and Samsung apparently wasn't happy with it. So Samsung, it seems like, pressured that partner into asking iFixit to pull it, which that's not cool, Samsung.
It's already out there. The product is out there.
Yeah, and this is definitely, man, this is like going to be, and it already is, a Streisand effect. Like, as soon as iFixit, so iFixit pulled everything, and then they wrote a blog post saying, "Hey, we pulled everything," and then that blog post, I guess, obviously because of the newsworthiness of it, spread like wildfire, and now it drew even more attention to this thing that Samsung apparently wanted pulled from the infinite memory of the interweb,
Mm.
which is never a good idea.
But yeah, so we had some kind of idea of why these phones are breaking. Basically, there was a excuse me, there was a gap where debris could enter and dislodge the hinge. This was the second problem that some reviews were encountering, and it appears that over time, more and more people, as more and more people used it into the 10-day period, uh, we saw more incidents of dirt getting in, and this is, you would think this is something that was captured in QA ahead of time, unless they were only testing in like a pure white environment and not actually letting people go into the world with them.
Their testers were the journalists who got review units. I love Joanna Stern's headline. She said, "Samsung, we're not your beta testers," and I think that, man, I really think that her review was totally fair, even though there were reports um, out of South Korea that said that apparently my dog just entered the room. Apparently, people were, or at least people inside Samsung, were not happy at all with the Wall Street Journal's review, and that they found her review to be very immature and very
Mm,
slanderous. It seems like,
really?
um, yeah, there was some report out of South Korean media of some kind that said that. Um, but I mean, one of the things that she did in the end of her review was she was like, fold this and fold this, not this. And she showed the phone. And one of the things that she said, fold this, was a hot dog. And then after the review was over, she put
Yeah, I
a,
saw that picture.
yeah, hot dog
Yeah.
in a Galaxy Fold, and that was her little header image. And obviously, the headline was pretty harsh. Um, so apparently, Samsung did not like that at all. So,
Yeah. And of
uh,
course, the other big news about the Galaxy Fold this week is that they pulled their. It was supposed to launch today, April 26th. Customers were supposed to
oh
get their
yeah,
orders in today. But earlier this week, they decided to pull it. They started by stopping the China launch, and then it quickly moved on to the US. So AT&T, for quite a bit, was still saying they were shipping. But I believe 2 days ago, they pulled any shipment date. They pulled today's shipment date. Furthermore, they I think they mentioned the date in in June or something, June or
yeah,
July, and
AT&T.
then they ended up pulling that as well. So we don't know when this phone is coming. If it's coming, do you think it's coming back in this same implementation?
I think it'll be released. Yes, I do think it will eventually be released. Um, I would guess that it'll be a few months behind. I don't know to what extent it will be released. Is every single person that pre-ordered one going to end up getting one? I
Mm,
don't know. Is Samsung going to do some kind of limited release, even more limited than was planned of some kind, and then really pull itself together for the second
the
generation
next one,
launch next
yeah.
year? Um,
Should they just pull
yeah,
it though, like completely, and just put the try again on the second one, or was that too much of a gap where they're
I
just
think
leaving it to Huawei?
I- well, there's two questions here. Will Samsung do it, and should they do it? And the answer to should they do it, yes. I think in an ideal world, they would just say, well, whoops, this thing is definitely too fragile and too flawed for us to release out into the world. And it doesn't seem like any last minute manufacturing and remanufacturing changes, nor warning notes that they put in the box, could really
No.
resolve this problem. It doesn't seem like that. And so, yeah, I think in an ideal world, they would just be like, yeah, we tested this in a very controlled environment that was not reflective of the real world at all. And we learned very quickly from the very few people that were using it that it has a catastrophic failure rate. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, 5 or 6 of these were broken within a few days. And so if you extrapolate that to every device over years, these things are supposed to last 3 or 4 years, right? With that, like that was what they were quoting. If you extrapolate that 3 broke or 5 broke over the course of 2 days, and that was what was that? Maybe 10% of the review units out there. Maybe there were 50 units out there. Five,
Mm,
10% of them broke after 2 days. What percentage of all of the thousands of units that would be out there would break after 4 years? It's got to be
mm,
upwards of 90%, right? Like it's got to be a huge percentage, because this was not a one-off defect. This seems to be a problem that was affecting every single phone, but it only happened to the smaller numbers. I mean, I guess there are two problems. One is the peeling off of the screen protector. And the other problem is the dust getting up and under the hinge and causing the screen to break. That was not specific to 1 or 2 units. It seems like the flaw that iFix had described is applies to every single phone. So all it is a matter of time before a crumb big enough gets up under the screen and causes it to bulge and then break, because those OLED panels are flexible but very, very, very fragile. And so to me, it seems if this thing does ship, how do they address that on a large scale and still ship
yeah.
and then not be an issue. It seems like it has to be, it may remain an issue. And Samsung will say, warning, treat this thing like a newborn baby because it is going to break in 24 hours if you're not careful. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me how they could still ship it. Will they still ship
Gaskets.
it? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. There stuff some kind of plastic gasket or something in there.
These
Are they?
the thing to remember is these units are there already. They're in boxes, but
Yeah,
Samsung
they're
basically
they're
will put
already in
it
the
back.
United States. Probably, they're probably sitting in warehouses in the U.S.
They have to be
Yeah.
sent back to South Korea, and then
Or
they have
wherever they're being manufactured.
wherever they're being made, and then they have to patch it up somehow in a way that's, I don't know, cost. Do they care about cost right now, or do they just want to make sure they can get this product out the door, a good
Yeah,
version of this
I don't
product
know.
out the door? So good
What
question.
I would guess is going to happen. I think there's too much Samsung pride like wrapped up
Yeah,
in this for them
definitely.
not to launch it, for them to just cancel it until next year. I think there's too much pride in it for that. So I think what's going to happen is that they're going to launch it on a very limited basis. They're going to let a lot of people that pre-ordered keep their units, and what they're going to do is they're going to keep a lot of units in back stock to replace under warranty for the first year or
Yeah.
two. Like 2-year warranty will replace any dust under screen issues that you have, and the problem will be fixed for the second generation, and the first one will just be a memory.
Hmm.
That's what I would guess. It's kind of the same situation. It's funny that this keeps coming up, but it's kind of the same situation that Apple's facing with its MacBook keyboards.
Mhm.
It's about dust in under delicate technology. They're the same story, but different companies and different scenarios, different devices. And I think with the Apple keyboards, they admitted like, yeah,
Yeah.
these keyboards are messed up, and so we're just going to replace them for free for 4 years. Like
Yeah.
that was Apple's admission, you know. Um, and so maybe just like Apple, Samsung will put some kind of plastic gasket or sleeve in there to keep the dust out, and then just call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah. This product, this Samsung's moment is, regardless if they fix it or not, it's they lost the moment. They lost the appeal.
Oh
The
man, they definitely lost it. Definitely, and it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a cool technology. It's purely cool, but execution,
Yeah, it's not enough for it to be cool.
no, it's not. I
Yeah,
guess what
that's my take from day one, I think, on these.
I'm very curious how Huawei, whether this technology is tied to this specific form factor or it was just Samsung's design, particular design. So I think these other companies are going to give us a good benchmark.
Yeah, I looked at the Huawei. So I looked at some of the Huawei hands-ons after this whole debacle fell out, and I mean, I think that there are gaps for dust and crumbs and stuff to creep into the Galaxy Fold that don't exist on the Mate
Ooh,
X. Like the Mate X looks like it's sealed to me. I may be wrong, but it looks like it's airtight based
yeah,
on hands-ons that I've seen. So this particular issue may not affect the Mate X. And it'll be really interesting to see if the Mate X launches in the next 6 months, if
yeah.
they kind of steal Samsung's thunder a little bit. We'll see. It's definitely not going to launch in the US, but
That's so cool. I guess the issue that Huawei is inherently facing is that the hinge being out with the hinge, and that the screen facing the elements of being pulled out of your pocket, of being constantly squeezed. So there might be another issue vector to arise for that
oh yeah,
particular.
that's another thing. Is like the Mate X has an OLED display just like the Galaxy Fold, and one of the best things about the Galaxy Fold design is that it protects that fragile display. And if the display is on the outside and it's as fragile as Samsung's is, all it would take would be, just one bump on the edge of that thing, and it would be broken in the same way. I mean, if all it takes on Samsung's design is one crumb,
Hmm.
then imagine what a bump would do to the outside of the wrapped around display on the Mate X. It would break it just as easily. So, anyways, I'm
Yeah.
sad. I'm sad that it went this way, although I'm not surprised at all. And I think that it will still be a couple of years before foldables have any kind of
if ever. This
impact.
technology isn't inevitable. It's not. It's
Yeah, I agree with that. I can't imagine what the reaction inside Apple was as this was happening, as this whole thing was going down. I just would love to be a fly on the wall
for
in some
that
of
moment.
those boardrooms. I bet they were so freaking excited. Like I can just imagine them just like I don't know.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyways, what else happened this week? I went on a rant about Google's Android distribution data feed thing, which
yeah,
today actually is the 6-month anniversary of the Google Android distribution numbers being offline. So, yeah.
it's well, we haven't been able to write a monthly blog post chronicling the tiny point incremental
What
increases.
a
So
shame. What a shame.
yeah, and I usually write those, and I'm kind of fine with it. To TBH,
I
kind of fine, I have to admit, not doing that monthly.
don't blame you.
But yeah,
No.
at the end of the day, who's impacted? Developers, I guess. But as we pointed out in the post, they have their own internal stats of what versions of the operating system their users are on. So that's not the biggest impact.
Yeah.
So
In other Android minutia, the Android open source project added AT&T's really dumb 5GE logo to yeah, they added the 5GE
yeah,
logo to Android open source. So we'll expect to see that on Pixel devices and other Android phones.
yeah.
Very
It's the one thing like the rest of for the rest of the world, it's 4G. 4G means something. They don't really call it LTE. The symbols the 4G indicate, I believe, and
mm,
I would so much prefer looking at 4G in my stats bar rather than LTE. And now we're 5G. It's the same thing happening again.
mm. Yep. Um, Archive
Yep.
also dug up that Android Q is coming to Chrome OS, or at least first initial evidence, which is not all that surprising. But Google did skip O, right? They
Yeah,
skipped Oreo support in Chrome OS.
which
Uh,
I think it's too soon for Q. There not enough devices have Pi right now, and if they
I know.
already jump,
Yeah,
I
there's
I,
not many.
I think they benefit from a 2 year cycle, but at the same time, Q's multi-window stuff might I don't know help with the Android app situation and
Yeah,
multi-resume.
for sure. And then also we reported on Android Q potentially adding some kind of swipe to go back gesture that will presumably replace the back button in some way. Early development, but we'll see. We'll probably actually see a lot of these user-facing UI changes more
It'll be
prevalent
on
with Beta
stage,
3. It'll be on stage too,
definitely.
yeah, at I/O. So that happened. Yeah, this week was a pretty slow week, I think. Like there was,
For IO being 2 weeks out, it
yeah,
was.
a little bit of a calm before the storm, I think.
Yeah,
I
next
would,
week.
if I were to guess, next week's going to be a lot more busy.
Next
Uh,
week we start getting previews that Google hosts with like the I don't know Washington Post and New York Times about what they're going to talk at the conference. If you remember last year, Google announced so much stuff the week before I/O because of
oh
stuff
yeah.
that couldn't make it for the stage. So I wonder if we'll see a repeat.
Oh yeah, I think we'll definitely see that. That's a good point. We will probably see a lot of stuff announced next week that Google wants
Fine, I
to
think.
include in the flood, but not the
I
main
think
flood.
you're right. Yeah. I think we had a Wear OS thing last year, right?
Mm, I think so.
So we'll
Wouldn't be
see
surprised if
what.
that happens again this year because there's as of yet zero Wear OS sessions on Google I/O schedule, unless that's
Oh, jeez.
changed.
Not yet.
So that could be one of two things. It could mean Wear OS is really, really dead, more dead than we thought. Or it could mean it's actually going to be a forefront of announcements, and Google is just keeping that hidden.
Maybe there's a new name. Who knows? That's a primary reason they usually don't put sessions up because it reveals a new name. But I doubt
Sure.
it. They just did Wear OS, and it's not a bad name, really.
Sure, sure. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much exhausted our topics for the week. Do you want to give us a little bit of a roundup on things for app updates this week, and then we'll call it a day?
So on the app updates, Windows users with Chrome 74 get a dark mode support. That is the Mac got it release earlier, so dark mode in Chrome is now a thing. We're still waiting for it on Android. Speaking of the mobile platform, we got Chrome received the translate menu, so you can manually translate pages. And Data Saver was renamed to Light Mode. It's not really a big impact or big change, but it's just a name rebrand. Google Fit came to iOS. Actually, I found this quite an interesting development. Basically, Google Fit on iOS basically just takes Apple Health data. It asks for permission to Apple Health, the default sensors that's already collecting data, and just Google Fit just correlates. But what's more interesting is Apple Health can sync with all these other apps, and Google Fit is basically just taking that same data recorded by Apple Health to show it in its unified timeline view. So in a way, they're really just piggybacking off Apple Health. In the long run, I think this is Google's attempt to get more data. Right now, they do move minutes and hard points. I think at the end of the day, this is Google's opening silo for their Google Health initiative, with Google Fit being. I think we're going to see a lot more of Google Fit in the future because this will be the health app that collects all the data. And in the future, presumably, it'll give much more interesting insights into your health by just collecting all this data. So it is an exciting development by coming to iOS. And maybe we'll get to hear about Google Health in the near future.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, lots of stuff this week that just wasn't all too exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
hopefully we'll be. Yeah, go ahead. What's up?
next week's show is a prediction show of what we're expecting from I/O, and
Yeah,
send us questions.
Tradition. We'll be covering everything that we've covered pretty much over the last several weeks here on Alphabet Scoop. All the things we're expecting to see at I/O, maybe some of our own personal thoughts and predictions, and lots of things are pretty solid. But I/O actually, because there's no hardware, it tends to be a little bit more secretive than Google's annual hardware event. So there are definitely more things that are coming in a couple weeks that we still don't have any idea about at all. So be sure to tune in next week. Also, reminder, please follow us on Twitter. We have a new Twitter account for the Alphabet Scoop podcast. It's at ABC Scoop, twitter.com/ABC Scoop. We're just trying to get as many followers there as we can so that you know exactly when these shows are going live on YouTube and also hitting your various podcasting platforms. So until next week, you can tune into Alphabet Scoop here every week. We record this podcast every Wednesday. We will be back next Wednesday after the last few weeks of doing Friday shows, and publish on Thursday mornings on all your favorite podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, Google Play, and you can also listen over at 9to5google.com. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.